The smell of cinnamon and pine needles should have felt like coming home. Instead, it felt like walking into a museum of memories that no longer belonged to me. December snow crunched beneath my combat boots as I stood on the familiar cobblestone walkway, staring at the two-story colonial house where I'd spent the first 18 years of my life. Red and gold Christmas lights twinkled around the wraparound porch, casting warm shadows across the pristine white siding. Through the large bay window, I could see the towering Douglas fir tree, decorated with the same glass ornaments my grandmother had collected over decades. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from, and if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. Everything looked exactly as it should for Christmas Eve. Everything except the fact that I wasn't supposed to be here. My breath formed small clouds in the frigid Connecticut air as I shifted the weight of my duffel bag from one shoulder to the other. Inside my jacket pocket, my phone buzzed with another missed call from my commanding officer, but I ignored it. Tonight was about family. Tonight was about trying to bridge a chasm that had been widening for the past 8 years. The front door was painted the same deep burgundy it had always been, adorned with a massive wreath of fresh evergreen boughs and burgundy velvet ribbon. I could hear voices from inside, the familiar cadence of my family's Christmas Eve gathering. Laughter echoed through the walls, warm and inviting to anyone who belonged. The question was whether I still did. I raised my hand to knock, then hesitated. Through the sheer curtains of the dining room window, I caught glimpses of movement. My mother, Patricia, bustling around the dining table in her emerald green dress, the one she wore every Christmas Eve. My father, Robert, probably nursing his traditional eggnog while holding court near the fireplace. My younger sister, Madison, would be there too, along with her husband, Derek, and their twin boys, now 8 years old, the boys I'd never met in person. My nephew, Tyler, and my nephew, Lucas, whose birthday cards I'd sent from 3 different continents, whose Christmas presents I'd mailed from bases across the world. I wondered if they even knew my name, or if I was just Aunt Sarah, the one who sends things from far away. Taking a deep breath that burned my lungs with cold air, I finally knocked. 3 firm raps, the way I'd learned to announce myself in briefing rooms and command centers across the globe. The sound echoed against the wooden door, and for a moment, the voices inside quieted. Footsteps approached from the other side. Heavy, deliberate. My father's gate. The deadbolt turned with a metallic click, and the door swung open to reveal Robert Anderson, looking older than his 62 years. His hair had gone completely silver since I'd last seen him in person 3 years ago, and new lines creased the corners of his eyes. He wore a navy cardigan over pressed khakis, his standard Christmas Eve attire for as long as I could remember. His expression shifted through several emotions in rapid succession. Surprise, confusion, and then something that looked uncomfortably close to annoyance. "Sarah," he said my name like he was confirming an unwelcome surprise. "We weren't expecting you." "Merry Christmas to you too, Dad." I attempted a smile, though it felt forced even to me. I managed to get leave. Thought I'd surprise everyone. He didn't step aside to let me in. Instead, he glanced over his shoulder toward the warmth and light behind him, then back at me. "You should have called first." I tried, multiple times over the past 2 weeks. No one answered. A flicker of something passed across his face. Guilt, maybe, or irritation that I'd caught him in the lie. "We've been busy with the holidays, too busy to return a single phone call from their daughter, who'd been stationed in South Korea for the past 14 months. Too busy to respond to the texts I'd sent asking about Christmas plans. Too busy to acknowledge that I existed at all until I showed up on their doorstep." "Who is it, honey?" My mother's voice drifted from somewhere inside the house, melodic and warm in the way that had once meant safety and unconditional love. Robert hesitated, his hands still gripping the doorframe. For a moment, I thought he might actually close the door in my face. Instead, he called back, "It's Sarah." The voices inside went quiet again. No excited exclamations of welcome. No rush of footsteps toward the door. Just silence that stretched long enough to be uncomfortable. "Yeah." Finally, my mother appeared beside my father, wearing the same emerald dress I'd glimpsed through the window. Her auburn hair was styled in perfect waves, and her makeup was flawless, despite having spent the day cooking. She looked like she'd stepped out of a holiday magazine spread, all grace and seasonal elegance. When she saw me, her smile was polite, but distant. The kind of smile she might give to a door-to-door salesperson or an unexpected neighbor. "Sarah, what a surprise!" Her tone was carefully neutral. "We didn't know you were coming. I wanted to surprise everyone. For Christmas." Patricia's eyes moved over my appearance, taking in the military-issued winter jacket, the practical boots, the way my hair was pulled back in a regulation bun. I saw her lips tighten, almost imperceptibly, the same expression she'd worn when I'd first announced my intention to join the Army right after high school graduation. "Well," she said after a pause that lasted too long, "I suppose you'd better come in, though we weren't planning for an extra place at dinner." The words hit harder than any roadside bomb I'd ever encountered. We weren't planning for an extra place. As if I were a stranger who'd wandered in from the street, rather than their daughter who'd spent every Christmas of her life at that dining room table until 8 years ago. I followed them inside, the familiar sense of home washing over me. Pine from the Christmas tree, vanilla from the candles my mother always lit, the rich aroma of her famous prime rib roasting in the oven. The house was decorated exactly as it had been throughout my childhood. Garland draped the staircase banister, stockings hung from the mantelpiece, and every surface sparkled with holiday magic. Except there were only 4 stockings hanging from the mantel: Patricia, Robert, Madison, and Derek. No 5th stocking for me. No acknowledgement that I'd ever been part of this family's Christmas tradition. Madison appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. At 28, she was 4 years younger than me, but she looked settled in a way I'd never managed. Her blonde hair fell in soft curls around her shoulders, and she wore a cream-colored sweater that probably cost more than my monthly housing allowance. When she saw me, her expression mirrored our parents' careful politeness. "Sarah, hi." She didn't move to hug me. "This is unexpected." "I know. I'm sorry I didn't call ahead. I just thought—" I trailed off, unsure how to finish that sentence. "I thought you'd be happy to see me. I thought Christmas was about family. I thought maybe this year would be different." "The boys are in the playroom," Madison said, gesturing vaguely toward the back of the house. "Derek's helping them with their new gaming system." I nodded, though she hadn't exactly extended an invitation to meet my nephews. The same nephews I'd been sending birthday and Christmas gifts to for 8 years. The ones whose school pictures I kept in my wallet, creased from being carried through deserts and jungles and forward operating bases across 3 continents. An awkward silence settled over the foyer. My parents stood together, a united front of polite distance. Madison fidgeted with her dish towel, and I stood there in my military jacket, feeling like an intruder in the house where I'd learned to walk and talk and dream about my future. "Well," Patricia finally said, "I suppose I should set another place at the table, though dinner's already been timed for 4 people." Another subtle reminder that I wasn't expected, wasn't wanted, wasn't part of the carefully orchestrated family gathering. I wondered if they'd deliberately ignored my calls, or if they'd simply forgotten that I existed until I appeared on their doorstep. "I don't want to put you out," I said. "I can grab something later." "Nonsense," Robert said, though his tone suggested he thought it was a perfectly reasonable option. "You're here now?" Yes, I was here now. In the house where I'd grown up, believing that family meant unconditional love and acceptance. Where I'd spent countless Christmas mornings unwrapping presents under this same tree. Where I'd helped my mother bake cookies and learned to play piano in the living room that I could see through the archway. But standing there in my combat boots on the hardwood floors my father had refinished when I was 12, I felt like a ghost haunting someone else's memories. Madison disappeared back into the kitchen without another word. My parents exchanged a look that spoke volumes about their shared irritation at having their perfect Christmas disrupted by their eldest daughter's unexpected appearance. And I stood there, duffel bag still slung over my shoulder, wondering why I'd thought this time would be any different. Through the archway, I could see the dining room table set for 4. 4 places, 4 cloth napkins, 4 crystal water glasses catching the light from the chandelier overhead. The same chandelier that had hung there when I was a child, when Madison and I would count its crystals while waiting for permission to leave the table after Sunday dinners. Now there would be 5 for dinner, but only because I'd forced the issue by showing up unannounced. An inconvenience to be accommodated rather than a daughter to be welcomed home. The sound of children's laughter drifted from the back of the house, high and bright and completely unaware of the tension in the foyer. My nephews, playing with toys and games I'd helped provide through presents shipped from halfway around the world. Boys who'd been toddlers when I last saw them in person, now old enough to have personalities and preferences and dreams of their own. Boys I was apparently not expected to meet, even on Christmas Eve. I shifted my weight from one foot to the other, the familiar weight of my duffel bag, a reminder of all the places I'd been, all the Christmases I'd spent away from home in service to my country. Christmas morning in Afghanistan, sharing MREs with my fellow soldiers while families back home opened presents. Christmas Eve in a forward operating base in Iraq, listening to carols played over a crackling radio, while sandstorms howled outside our temporary shelters. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. All those Christmases when I dreamed about coming home to this house, to this family, to the warmth and love I remembered from my childhood. I'd imagined my parents proud of my service, my nephews excited to meet their army aunt, my sister grateful for all the times I'd sent care packages and birthday presents from whatever corner of the world my duties had taken me. Instead, I stood in a foyer that felt more foreign than any overseas deployment, surrounded by family members who looked at me like I was an unwelcome reminder of something they'd rather forget. The Christmas tree lights twinkled in my peripheral vision, casting the same warm glow they had throughout my childhood. But the warmth didn't reach me anymore. It belonged to the family of 4 who lived here now, who celebrated holidays without setting a place for the daughter, who'd chosen duty over tradition, service over staying close to home. Patricia emerged from the kitchen, carrying an extra place setting, her movements efficient but reluctant. She set the additional plate at the far end of the table, as far from the other 4 settings as the furniture would allow. A physical manifestation of the emotional distance that had been growing between us for 8 years. "Dinner will be ready in 20 minutes, she announced to the room in general, not quite looking at me. "I hope you're not too hungry." I wasn't, actually. The knot in my stomach had effectively killed my appetite. But I nodded anyway, grateful for the reprieve even if it meant 20 more minutes of standing in this beautiful house that no longer felt like home. The 20 minutes before dinner stretched like an eternity. I found myself gravitating toward the living room, drawn by muscle memory to spaces that had once brought comfort. The piano bench where I'd practiced scales every afternoon after school still sat in the corner, though a decorative poinsettia now occupied the music stand where my sheet music used to rest. Above the fireplace, family photographs chronicled the Anderson family history in carefully curated frames. I studied them with the analytical eye I developed during intelligence briefings, searching for clues about how my family had evolved in my absence. There was Madison's college graduation, her wedding day, the boys' first steps, birthday parties, Easter celebrations, summer vacations to Martha's Vineyard. A complete visual narrative of 8 years' worth of memories. 8 years' worth of memories that didn't include me. In the earlier photos from before my enlistment, I could trace my gradual disappearance from the family narrative. High school graduation pictures showed 4 smiling faces. Madison's Sweet 16 party featured the whole family gathered around an elaborate pink cake. But as the timeline progressed toward more recent years, the photos consistently showed the same 4 people: Patricia, Robert, Madison, and Derek. Later additions included the twins, expanding the family unit from 4 to 6. But never 5, never with me. I found one exception, tucked behind a larger frame like an afterthought. A formal military portrait from my officer candidate school graduation, 7 years old now and slightly faded. I was 25 in the photo, standing at attention in my dress blues, the gold bars of a second lieutenant gleaming on my shoulders, My expression was serious, proud, full of determination and hope for the future. Someone had placed it behind Madison's most recent family portrait, barely visible unless you looked for it. Hidden away like a secret the family preferred not to acknowledge. That was such a serious phase you went through. Madison's voice startled me. She'd entered the living room quietly, carrying 2 cups of coffee. She offered one to me, a gesture that felt more obligatory than welcoming. Phase? I accepted the coffee, grateful for something to do with my hands. Madison settled into the cream-colored armchair that had been our mother's favorite reading spot when we were children. The whole military thing. We all thought you'd get it out of your system after a year or 2. The words stung more than they should have. 8 years of service, multiple deployments, commendations, and promotions and responsibilities that would have impressed most families. Reduced to a phase I should have outgrown by now. It wasn't a phase, Madison. It's my career, my life. She sipped her coffee delicately, leaving a perfect crescent of lipstick on the rim. But surely you must be ready to come home now? To settle down and start a real life? A real life. As opposed to the apparently fake life I'd been living while serving my country in some of the most dangerous regions on Earth. The fake life, where I'd earned the respect of my peers, led soldiers through impossible situations, and made decisions that affected national security. This is my real life, I said quietly. The Army isn't something I'm playing at. Madison's expression softened slightly, though I wasn't sure if it was genuine sympathy or practiced politeness. I know you think that now, but Sarah, you're 32 years old. Most of your friends from high school are married with children, established in their communities. Don't you want stability? A family of your own? The conversation felt like déjà vu, an echo of countless phone calls over the years where my family had questioned my choices, my priorities, my very identity. As if the life I'd built for myself was somehow less valid than the suburban domesticity they'd always assumed I'd eventually embrace. I have stability, I said, and I have a family. My unit, my soldiers, the people I serve with. That's not the same thing, Sarah. Madison set down her coffee cup with a gentle clink against the saucer. Those people aren't your blood. They don't know you the way we do. The irony was almost laughable. The people in my unit knew my favorite coffee order, remembered my birthday, celebrated my promotions, and worried about my safety when I was deployed to dangerous areas. They knew my strengths and weaknesses, my sense of humor, my dedication to the mission. They saw me as a leader, a friend, a valued member of their military family. Meanwhile, the people who shared my blood couldn't remember to return my phone calls or save a place for me at Christmas dinner. Tell me about the boys, I said, deflecting from the uncomfortable topic of my apparently inadequate life choices. Tyler and Lucas. I've been sending them presents, but I don't really know what they're interested in these days. Madison's face brightened immediately, the same way it had when we were children, and she got to talk about her latest obsession. Oh, they're wonderful. Tyler's passionate about soccer. He made the elite travel team this year, and we've been driving all over New England for tournaments. Lucas is more academic, like Derek. He's already reading at a 5th grade level, and his math teacher says he might be ready for advanced placement next year. I smiled, genuinely happy to hear about my nephew's achievements. That's incredible. They sound like amazing kids. They are, Madison agreed. Though it's been challenging, managing their schedules. Between Tyler's soccer and Lucas's tutoring sessions and Derek's work travel, we barely have time to breathe. She spoke about their busy family life with a mixture of pride and exhaustion, painting a picture of suburban abundance that included elite sports teams, private tutors, and endless extracurricular activities. A far cry from my own childhood, when money had been tighter and opportunities more limited. Apparently, Derek's career in pharmaceutical sales had been considerably more lucrative than anyone had expected. They don't really understand why Aunt Sarah lives so far away, Madison continued, her tone carefully neutral. We've explained that you're in the Army, but at their age, it's hard for them to grasp why someone would choose to be away from their family so much. Another subtle dig wrapped in concern for the children's confusion. As if my absence was a choice made in selfishness rather than service. As if the deployments and training exercises and temporary duty assignments were vacations I'd selected, rather than orders I'd followed. Maybe I could explain it to them myself, I suggested, if they're curious about what I do. Madison hesitated, and in that pause I heard volumes. Well, they're pretty tired tonight, and tomorrow's Christmas morning, so they'll be excited about their presents. Maybe another time. Another time. The eternal promise that had been dangled in front of me for years. Another time we'll visit. Another time you can meet them properly. Another time we'll all get together. Another time that never seemed to arrive. From the kitchen came the sound of cabinet doors opening and closing, the clink of silverware being arranged. Patricia preparing for a dinner that would seat 5 instead of the planned 4, making accommodations for the daughter who'd had the audacity to show up unannounced on Christmas Eve. I should help Mom with dinner, Madison said, rising from her chair with practiced grace. You know how she gets when her timing is off. I did know. Patricia Anderson's Christmas Eve dinners were legendary in their precision, each course timed to perfection, every detail orchestrated like a military operation. The irony wasn't lost on me that my mother approached holiday entertaining with more strategic planning than most generals brought to battlefield operations. Left alone in the living room, I wandered back to the family photographs, studying them with fresh eyes. In the older pictures, from my elementary and middle school years, I could see genuine happiness. Family vacations to Cape Cod, birthday celebrations, school events where we all looked like we genuinely enjoyed each other's company. But something had shifted during my high school years. The smiles became more forced, the family dynamics more strained. I remembered the fights about my college plans, my parents' disappointment when I chose state school over the private institutions they'd preferred, their horror when I announced my intention to join the Army instead of pursuing graduate school or a corporate career. You're too smart for the military, my father had said, as if intelligence were incompatible with military service. As if the thousands of brilliant officers I'd served alongside were somehow intellectual failures who'd defaulted to military careers because they couldn't succeed elsewhere. You're throwing away your potential, my mother had added, tears streaming down her face as if I'd announced a terminal diagnosis rather than a career choice. They'd attended my commissioning ceremony, but their pride had been overshadowed by disappointment. They smiled for photos and congratulated me appropriately, but I could see the bewilderment in their eyes. Their daughter, the honors student and debate team captain, choosing to serve in an institution they viewed as beneath her capabilities. The first few years hadn't been terrible. They'd called regularly, sent care packages during my initial deployments, shared my letters with friends and neighbors. But as my service continued past their expected timeline, as promotions took me to increasingly remote assignments, their interest had waned. Phone calls became less frequent. Care packages stopped arriving. My achievements went unacknowledged, my challenges unshared. By the time I made major 3 years ago, they'd stopped asking about my career entirely. Dinner's ready, Patricia's voice called from the dining room, cutting through my brooding memories. I straightened my shoulders and headed toward the dining room, where my family was already taking their seats around the mahogany table that had been our grandmother's. The table was set beautifully, as always, with the good china and crystal glasses that only appeared for special occasions. Candles flickered in silver holders, casting dancing shadows across the cream-colored tablecloth. My place setting sat at the far end of the table, isolated from the family cluster at the other end. A physical representation of the emotional distance that had grown between us over the years. Derek stood as I entered, extending his hand with the practiced politeness of someone meeting a business acquaintance. Sarah, good to see you again. Madison's told me so much about you. He was handsome in a conventional way, with sandy brown hair and a firm handshake, wearing a burgundy sweater that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. Everything about him screamed successful suburban professional, from his perfectly whitened teeth to his expensive watch. It's good to meet you too, Derek. I shook his hand, noting the softness of palms that had never held a rifle or worked manual labor. Congratulations on the family. Madison says the boys are incredible. They are, he agreed, his chest puffing slightly with paternal pride. Though they're getting expensive. Elite sports programs, tutoring, music lessons. Sometimes I joke that they cost more than my mortgage. It was meant to be humorous, a light-hearted complaint about the financial burdens of upper-middle-class parenting. But something about the casual mention of expenses that exceeded mortgage payments rankled. I thought about the soldiers I'd served with who sent every spare dollar home to families struggling to make rent, who worked second jobs during leave periods to afford their children's basic needs. We took our seats, Patricia at the head of the table nearest the kitchen, Robert to her right, Madison and Derek clustered together on one side. I sat alone at the far end, a guest in my own family's home. Robert carved the prime rib with ceremonial precision, the same ritual I remembered from childhood Christmas dinners. The meat was perfectly cooked, pink in the center and surrounded by roasted vegetables that had been arranged with artistic care. Patricia's cooking had always been exceptional, another point of pride in a household that valued perfection. "So, Sarah," Robert said as he placed a slice of beef on my plate, "how long are you home for?" Home. As if this place still qualified as home for someone who clearly wasn't welcome. "I have 2 weeks of leave," I replied, accepting the plate with a polite smile. "Though I'm not sure yet how I'll spend all of it." Another pause. No immediate offers of extended family time or suggestions for activities we might enjoy together. Just the quiet acknowledgement that I had 14 days to fill with something other than family bonding. 2 weeks, Patricia repeated, reaching for the wine bottle. "That seems like quite a long time to be away from your duties." The hesitation before duties spoke volumes about how my family viewed my career. As if my responsibilities were somehow less important than Derek's pharmaceutical sales or Madison's part-time interior design work. "The Army's pretty good about leave during the holidays," I said, "especially for people who've been deployed recently." "And where were you deployed this time?" Derek asked, making conversation with the same tone he might use to inquire about a business trip. "South Korea. Liaison work with our allies there." Silence greeted this information. No follow-up questions about the nature of the work, the challenges involved, or the strategic importance of the alliance. Just polite nodding, and a swift change of subject to safer territory. "Madison, tell Sarah about the boys' Christmas pageant," Patricia suggested, clearly eager to move away from military topics. And so the conversation flowed around safer subjects. School performances, travel soccer tournaments, Derek's latest sales achievements, Patricia's volunteer work with the hospital auxiliary. Normal family topics that painted a picture of comfortable suburban success. Topics that didn't include me. I ate in relative silence, responding when directly addressed but mostly listening to the casual chatter of a family that had learned to function perfectly well without me. They spoke of shared memories I hadn't been part of, inside jokes I didn't understand, future plans that didn't include me. It was like watching a play about a family that closely resembled my own, but in which I'd been written out of the script years ago. The sound of children's laughter finally broke through the suffocating politeness of dinner conversation. Tyler and Lucas burst into the dining room like twin tornadoes, their energy infectious and uncontainable. Both boys had Derek's sandy hair and Madison's bright blue eyes, but their personalities seemed distinctly their own. "Mom, can we open just one present tonight?" Tyler asked, bouncing on his toes beside Madison's chair. "Please? Just one tiny one?" "Absolutely not," Madison replied, though her tone was indulgent. "You know the rule. Christmas morning only." Lucas, the quieter of the two, had noticed me sitting at the far end of the table. He studied me with curious eyes, tilting his head in a way that reminded me painfully of Madison at that age. "Are you Aunt Sarah?" he asked, his voice carrying the directness that only children possessed. The adults at the table suddenly found their wine glasses fascinating. Patricia reached for the serving spoon with unnecessary focus. Robert cleared his throat and adjusted his napkin. Madison looked like she wanted to disappear into her chair. "I am," I said, smiling at my nephew for the first time that evening. "You must be Lucas. I've been sending you birthday cards." His face lit up with recognition. "You're the one who sent the Lego space station, and the books about fighter jets." "Lucas, finish your dessert in the kitchen," Derek interjected quickly, his voice carrying an edge of discomfort. "But I want to talk to Aunt Sarah," Tyler protested, having caught his brother's excitement. "She sends us the coolest stuff. Remember the walkie-talkies that worked from like a mile away?" "Boys, please," Madison said, her cheeks flushing pink. "Let the adults finish their conversation." But Tyler was undeterred, his 8-year-old enthusiasm bulldozing through the carefully constructed barriers his parents had erected. "Are you really in the Army? Like, with guns and tanks and stuff?" "I am," I replied, grateful for his uninhibited curiosity. "Though I work more with strategy and planning than tanks." "That's so cool," Lucas exclaimed. "Do you know how to fly helicopters?" "I've flown in them, but I don't pilot them myself." "Have you ever been in a war?" Tyler asked, his eyes wide with the fascination that only children could maintain for topics adults found uncomfortable. The question hung in the air like a grenade with the pin pulled. I could feel my family's collective discomfort radiating across the table. These were the conversations they'd clearly avoided having with the boys, the realities of military service they preferred to gloss over with vague explanations about Aunt Sarah being far away. "I've been to places where there was fighting," I said carefully, choosing my words for an 8-year-old audience. "My job is to help keep people safe." "Like a superhero?" Lucas asked, his imagination immediately latching onto familiar concepts. Before I could answer, Madison stood abruptly. "Boys, that's enough questions. Go brush your teeth and get ready for bed. Santa won't come if you're not asleep." The promise of Santa was enough to override their curiosity, and they scrambled toward the stairs with shouts of, "Good night, Aunt Sarah," and "Tell us more stories tomorrow." Tomorrow, a promise I wasn't sure Madison intended to keep. Not OU. The silence that followed their departure was heavy with unspoken tensions. Patricia busied herself clearing dessert plates, her movements sharp and efficient. Robert swirled the remaining wine in his glass, studying it like it contained the secrets of the universe. "They're good kids," I said, attempting to break the awkward quiet. "They are," Derek agreed stiffly. "We try to keep their exposure to certain topics age-appropriate. Certain topics, like the fact that their aunt served her country in dangerous places, that she'd made sacrifices most people couldn't imagine, that she dedicated her life to protecting freedoms these children took for granted." "I understand," I said, though understanding and agreeing were two completely different things entirely. Madison returned from tucking the boys in, her composure somewhat restored. "They get overexcited about new people. And they watch too many action movies at Derek's brother's house." The implication was clear. My presence was disruptive. My military service an inappropriate influence. My very existence something that needed to be managed and controlled around impressionable children. "Sarah," Patricia said, finally sitting back down with a fresh cup of coffee, "we should probably discuss your plans while you're here." Plans. Plural. As if I'd be staying long enough to require multiple activities. "I don't have any specific plans," I admitted. "I was hoping to spend time with my family. Get to know Tyler and Lucas better. Catch up with everyone." Another pause. More meaningful glances exchanged between parents and siblings. "The thing is," Robert began, setting down his wine glass with deliberate care, "we already have commitments this week. The Hendersons' New Year's party. Madison's book club Christmas gathering. Derek's company function. A litany of social obligations that somehow couldn't include their daughter and sister. Events that had been planned without consideration for my presence, because my presence hadn't been expected or desired. I'm not asking to be included in your other plans," I said. "I just thought we could spend some time together as a family." "Of course," Madison said quickly, though her tone suggested anything but enthusiasm. "It's just that this time of year is so busy, and with the boys' schedules." She trailed off, leaving the sentence hanging like an apology that wasn't quite ready to be born. I looked around the table at these people who shared my blood, my history, my earliest memories, people who had once known my favorite bedtime stories, my biggest fears, my wildest dreams. Now they sat before me like polite strangers, offering excuses and deflections instead of welcome. "I have something to tell you," I said suddenly, the words emerging before I'd fully decided to speak them. The announcement seemed to catch everyone off guard. They turned toward me with expressions ranging from curiosity to barely concealed dread, as if they suspected I was about to announce another deployment or, worse, a permanent duty station even further from home. "I've been promoted," I continued, reaching into my jacket pocket for the official documents I'd been carrying since receiving them 3 weeks ago. "To Brigadier General." I placed the promotion orders on the table, the official Department of Defense letterhead stark against the cream-colored tablecloth. The words Brigadier General Sarah Michelle Anderson stood out in bold typeface, accompanied by seals and signatures that testified to the significance of the achievement. The silence that followed was deafening. Robert picked up the document first, his business background making him naturally drawn to official paperwork. His eyes scanned the text, his expression shifting from skepticism to surprise to something that might have been respect. "Brigadier General?" He repeated slowly, as if testing the words. That's quite an accomplishment." Patricia leaned over to read over his shoulder, her coffee cup forgotten in her hands. "Sarah, when did this happen?" "The promotion is effective January 1st, I explained. "But I was notified 3 weeks ago. I tried calling to share the news, but—" I gestured vaguely, letting them fill in the blanks about unreturned phone calls and ignored messages. Madison stared at the document like it was written in a foreign language. "Brigadier General. That's really high up, isn't it?" "It's a significant rank," I confirmed, understating what was actually a monumental achievement. "At 32, I was among the youngest officers ever to achieve general rank." The promotion represented not just personal success, but recognition of exceptional leadership and strategic thinking that had impressed the highest levels of military command. Derek cleared his throat awkwardly. "Congratulations, that's quite an honor." The word honor hung in the air, loaded with implications none of them seemed ready to unpack. For 8 years, they'd treated my military service like an extended phase of rebellion. Now they were confronted with evidence that their daughter and sister hadn't just been playing soldier in some distant corner of the world. She'd been excelling at the highest levels of military leadership. "What does this mean for your situation?" Patricia asked carefully. "My situation? Will you finally be able to come home? Settle down somewhere close by?" I almost laughed at the question. As if achieving the rank of general meant I'd suddenly be assigned to a desk job at the local National Guard armory, available for weekly family dinners and babysitting duties. "Actually, it means increased responsibilities," I explained. "Broader command authority, more complex assignments, likely more travel, not less." The disappointment on their faces was immediate and obvious. They'd briefly entertained the hope that my success might somehow make me more available to them, more aligned with their vision of appropriate life choices. Instead, I was telling them that achievement meant continued divergence from their suburban ideals. "But surely," Madison pressed, "at some point you'll want to retire? Start a family of your own?" There it was again. The persistent belief that my life as a military officer was somehow incomplete, that true fulfillment could only come through marriage, children, and geographical proximity to my birth family. "I love my career," I said simply. "I'm good at it. I make a difference." "But you're 32, Patricia added, her maternal instincts apparently unable to comprehend a daughter who found purpose outside traditional domestic roles. "Don't you want children? A husband?" The questions stung because they revealed how little my family understood about my life, my values, my definition of fulfillment. They saw my achievements through the lens of what I was missing, rather than what I had gained. "I have a family," I said quietly. "My soldiers, my colleagues, the people I serve with. They depend on me, and I depend on them. We look out for each other." "That's not the same thing," Robert interjected, his tone suggesting he found my perspective naive. "Those people aren't your blood. They're not permanent. They'll move on to other assignments, other units. Family is forever. Family is forever." The irony was almost overwhelming. I was sitting at a table where I'd been given the most distant seat, discussing my life with people who hadn't returned my phone calls, defending my choices to relatives who treated my presence like an inconvenience. Are they? I asked. Forever, I mean. The question clearly made them uncomfortable. They shifted in their chairs, avoided eye contact, reached for wine glasses and coffee cups with sudden urgency. Of course we are, Madison said, though her voice lacked conviction. We're family. Then why don't I have a stocking on the mantel? The question came out sharper than I'd intended, but 8 years of accumulated hurt had finally found its voice. Why wasn't a place set for me at dinner? Why do Tyler and Lucas barely know who I am? The accusations hung in the air like smoke from an explosion. There was no denying them, no explaining them away with talk of busy schedules or miscommunication. We didn't know you were coming, Patricia said weakly. But you knew I existed. You knew I might want to come home for Christmas. You knew I was your daughter. The past tense wasn't lost on anyone. Sarah, Robert began, his voice taking on the patronizing tone I remembered from childhood lectures. You chose a career that takes you away from family. You can't blame us for adapting to your absence. Adapting, I repeated. Is that what you call it when you stop returning phone calls? When you put my picture behind other frames? When you don't mention to your children that they have an aunt who serves her country? We mention you, Madison protested, though her protest sounded hollow even to her. As what? The aunt who sends presents from far away? The mysterious relative who chose something more important than family? You did choose something more important than family, Derek said bluntly, apparently deciding that honesty was the best policy. You chose the military over staying close to home. You chose deployments over holidays. You chose strangers over blood relatives. His words hit like a physical blow, not because they were false, but because they revealed the fundamental misunderstanding that had been poisoning my relationship with my family for years. I chose service, I said, standing up from the table with as much dignity as I could muster. I chose to protect the freedoms that allow you to live in comfort and safety. I chose to lead soldiers who voluntarily put themselves in harm's way so that people like you can worry about book clubs and company parties instead of incoming mortars. I picked up my promotion orders, folding them carefully and returning them to my jacket pocket. And you're right, I continued. I did choose that over family dinners and holiday traditions, because I believed that my family would understand, that they would be proud, that they would see my service as something honorable rather than something that needed to be tolerated. The silence that followed was total. No one moved, no one spoke, no one looked directly at me. Thank you for dinner, I said formally. I'll be staying at a hotel for the remainder of my leave. I walked toward the foyer, my footsteps echoing on the hardwood floors. Behind me, I heard the scrape of a chair, footsteps following. Sarah, wait! Madison's voice, uncertain but determined. I turned, hoping against hope for some sign of understanding, some bridge across the chasm that had opened between us. You don't have to stay at a hotel, she said. Your room is still here. We need time to process this. Process this. As if my promotion were a tragedy requiring grief counseling rather than an achievement worthy of celebration. No, I said quietly. I think I do need to stay somewhere else. Somewhere I'm actually welcome. I opened the front door, the cold December air rushing in like a physical relief after the suffocating atmosphere inside. Sarah, Patricia's voice called from the dining room doorway. We are proud of you. We wish. She didn't finish the sentence, but I understood. They wished I were someone else. They wished I'd made different choices. They wished their daughter had become someone they could understand and approve of, rather than someone who challenged their assumptions about success and fulfillment. I know, I said. Merry Christmas. I closed the door behind me and walked into the snowy night, leaving behind the house where I'd learned to dream and the family who'd never learned to see those dreams as worthy of respect. The Hampton Inn off Interstate 95 was a far cry from the elegant colonial where I'd grown up, but it offered something my childhood home couldn't: peace. The generic beige walls and standard-issue furniture felt more welcoming than my mother's carefully curated holiday decorations. Here, nobody expected me to be anyone other than who I was. I sat on the edge of the queen-sized bed, still in my dress clothes from dinner, staring at my phone. 7 missed calls from Colonel Martinez, my chief of staff, 3 text messages from Pentagon liaisons, an encrypted email marked urgent, eyes only, that had been sitting in my inbox for the past 4 hours. While I'd been enduring polite conversation and thinly veiled disappointment at my family's dinner table, the machinery of national defense had continued turning. Wars didn't pause for family holidays. International crises didn't wait for convenient timing. The responsibilities that came with my new rank didn't respect Christmas Eve. I opened the encrypted email first, my security clearance automatically authenticating as the message decoded on my screen. The sender was General Patricia Hawkins, one of only a handful of female 4-star generals in the Army, and my mentor for the past 3 years. Sarah, the message began, bypassing military formality in the way that only came with established relationships. Hope you're enjoying your leave, but we need to discuss your first assignment as BG. The President has specifically requested your involvement in a joint task force dealing with emerging threats in Eastern Europe. This is big-picture stuff: NATO coordination, strategic planning at the highest levels. Your expertise in international liaisons makes you the ideal candidate. Conference call scheduled for 0800 tomorrow, the 26th of December. Sorry to interrupt your holiday, but this opportunity is career-defining. The kind of assignment that leads to those 2nd and 3rd stars. Congratulations again on the promotion. You've earned this, Pat. I read the message twice, letting the implications sink in. A presidential request, NATO coordination, the kind of high-level strategic work that most officers could only dream of. At 32, I was being handed responsibilities that typically went to generals with decades more experience. My phone buzzed with an incoming call. Colonel Martinez, persistent as always. General Anderson, I answered, the new title still feeling surreal. Ma'am, thank God. I've been trying to reach you for hours. We have a situation developing that requires your immediate attention. Martinez's voice carried the controlled urgency that came with years of military service. Whatever was happening, it was significant enough to warrant interrupting a general's Christmas leave. What's the situation, Colonel? Intelligence intercepts suggest coordinated movements along the Ukrainian border. Nothing definitive yet, but enough to warrant elevated alert status. The Joint Chiefs want your assessment based on your recent work with Korean allies. They're specifically asking for your input on defensive positioning strategies. I closed my eyes, the weight of responsibility settling on my shoulders like a familiar burden. While my family worried about book clubs and soccer tournaments, I was being asked to help shape America's response to potential international conflicts. I'll need secure communication access, I said, my mind already shifting into operational mode. Can you arrange a connection through the Hartford field office? Already done, ma'am. They're expecting you at 0600. I'll have the briefing materials transmitted through secure channels within the hour. After ending the call, I sat in the silence of the hotel room, contemplating the stark contrast between my two realities. In one world, I was Sarah Anderson, the daughter who'd disappointed her family by choosing an unconventional path. In the other, I was Brigadier General Anderson, trusted by the highest levels of government to help protect national security. The irony wasn't lost on me that while my own family questioned the value of my service, the President of the United States was requesting my personal involvement in matters of international importance. My laptop chimed with an incoming video call. General Hawkins appeared on the screen, calling from what looked like her Pentagon office despite the holiday. Sarah, congratulations again on the promotion. I hope I'm not interrupting family time. Not at all, ma'am. Actually, I'm available for whatever you need. Hawkins studied my expression through the video connection, her experienced eye-catching nuances that most people would miss. Everything all right? You look like you've had a long day. Just adjusting to civilian life, I said, which wasn't entirely false. The transition from military to family environments can be challenging. I understand completely, Hawkins replied, and I suspected she did. Like me, she'd chosen a career that demanded sacrifices most people couldn't comprehend. That's actually part of why I wanted to speak with you tonight. This Eastern Europe assignment isn't just about your tactical expertise. The president specifically mentioned wanting officers who understand the complexity of modern warfare, but who also understand the human cost of the decisions we make. She paused, selecting her words carefully. Your background, your perspective as someone who's served in multiple theaters, who's led troops in combat situations, that experience shapes your strategic thinking in ways that pure academics can't replicate. The president values that kind of authentic leadership. The president values that kind of authentic leadership. Words that my family would probably never hear. Recognition they would never witness. While they saw my military service as a phase one should outgrow, the commander-in-chief saw it as preparation for increasingly important responsibilities. There's something else, Hawkins continued. The assignment comes with significant media attention. Joint task force announcements, press briefings, congressional testimony. Your face will be on every major news network. Are you prepared for that level of visibility? I thought about my family, gathered around their television for post-dinner holiday programming. The possibility that they might see me on the news, representing American interests on an international stage, speaking for the military they'd never quite understood or respected. I'm prepared, ma'am. Good, because this is just the beginning, Sarah. The trajectory you're on, the confidence the senior leadership has in your abilities. We're looking at potential for significant advancement, 2 stars, 3 stars, positions that shape military policy for generations. After the call ended, I opened my laptop and began reviewing the classified briefing materials that Martinez had transmitted. Strategic assessments, intelligence reports, diplomatic cables that painted a complex picture of international tensions requiring careful navigation. This was the work that fulfilled me, that challenged every aspect of my training and experience. Problem-solving on a scale that affected millions of lives. Leadership responsibilities that demanded the best of my analytical and strategic thinking abilities. My phone rang again. This time, the caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize. Brav. General Anderson. Ma'am, this is Captain Jennifer Walsh from the Pentagon press office. General Hawkins asked me to coordinate with you regarding tomorrow's briefing. We'll need some background information for the press materials. Of course, Captain. The media is particularly interested in your rapid advancement, ma'am. Youngest female general in current service, distinguished record in multiple theaters. They're calling it a remarkable success story. A remarkable success story. The phrase echoed in my mind as I provided the necessary information for press materials. Somewhere in Connecticut, my family was probably settling in for Christmas Eve traditions, completely unaware that their daughter and sister was being characterized as a remarkable success story by the national media. After finishing the call with Captain Walsh, I walked to the hotel window and looked out at the snow-covered parking lot. Other families were probably gathering around Christmas trees, sharing stories and creating memories. Children were likely struggling to fall asleep in anticipation of Christmas morning surprises. I thought about Tyler and Lucas, probably tucked into their beds by now, dreaming of presents and Santa Claus. They had no idea that their Aunt Sarah was spending Christmas Eve reviewing classified intelligence reports and preparing for briefings that could influence international policy. Would they be proud if they knew? Would any of my family understand the significance of what I was being asked to do? My laptop chimed with another message, this one from the White House Communications Office. A formal notification that I would be participating in a live press conference on December 27th, announcing the formation of the Joint Task Force. My name would be included in the official press release, along with my photograph and a summary of my qualifications. The press release was scheduled for distribution to all major news outlets, including local affiliates throughout New England. There was a very real possibility that my family would see my name and face associated with high-level military operations before I had a chance to tell them myself. Part of me wondered how they would react. Would they finally understand that my career wasn't a phase or a rebellion, but a calling that had led to significant responsibility and recognition? Would they feel pride at seeing their daughter representing American interests on the international stage? Or would they find some way to diminish even this achievement, to frame it as another example of my choosing career over family? I opened my phone and scrolled through my contacts, pausing at Madison's number. Part of me wanted to call, to share the news about the presidential assignment, to give them one more chance to understand and support what I was doing. But the memory of tonight's dinner conversation was too fresh, the disappointment in their faces too clear. They'd made their position obvious. My achievements only mattered if they brought me closer to their version of an appropriate life. Instead, I called Colonel Martinez back. "Ma'am? Colonel, I want to move up to tomorrow's briefing. Can we make it 0500 instead of 0600? Absolutely, General. Is there anything specific you need prepared? Just make sure we have everything we need for a comprehensive strategic assessment. This is going to be a high-visibility assignment, and I want our analysis to be flawless." "Understood, ma'am. Anything else?" "Yes. Send my regrets to anyone expecting me at family functions over the next few days. I'll be fully focused on mission preparation." After ending the call, I changed into comfortable clothes and spread the classified documents across the hotel desk. The intelligence reports painted a complex picture of shifting international alliances and emerging threats that required careful analysis. This was where I belonged, where my skills and experience had value, where my contributions mattered. Not in a dining room where I was treated like an inconvenient reminder of unconventional choices, but in strategic planning sessions where my insights helped shape national policy. My phone displayed the time, 11:47 p.m. on Christmas Eve. In 13 minutes, it would be Christmas Day, and I would be exactly where I needed to be, preparing to serve my country at the highest levels of responsibility. While my family slept in their comfortable suburban beds, I worked through the night, analyzing threats and developing strategies that would be briefed to the president within 48 hours. The contrast was stark and undeniable. They questioned my choices. The commander-in-chief requested my expertise. They treated my service as an inconvenience. The Pentagon valued my strategic thinking. They saw my achievements as obstacles to a normal life. The Joint Chiefs saw them as preparation for even greater responsibilities. As Christmas Day arrived, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Complete clarity about where I belonged and what I was meant to do. Not in a house where my stocking didn't hang on the mantel, but in briefing rooms where my voice helped shape the security of the nation. The secret victory wasn't just my promotion to general. It was the recognition that I had found my true family among those who understood service, sacrifice, and the weight of decisions that affected millions of lives. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "General Anderson, this is Tyler. Mom gave me your number. Can you tell me more Army stories when you come back? I think what you do is really cool." I smiled as I typed back, "I'd love to share some stories with you, Tyler. Maybe someday you'll understand that your Aunt Sarah does something pretty important." Outside the hotel window, snow continued to fall on Christmas morning, but inside my temporary command center, I was exactly where I belonged. Christmas morning arrived with crystalline clarity, both literally and figuratively. The Hartford FBI field office was nearly deserted, its corridors echoing with the hollow sound of emergency operations on a federal holiday. Agent Rebecca Torres met me at the security checkpoint, her expression serious, despite the festive red scarf she wore beneath her government-issued jacket. "General Anderson, thank you for coming in on Christmas. We have the secure communications suite ready for your use." The classified briefing room felt more like home than my family's dining room had the night before. Multiple screens displayed real-time intelligence feeds from Eastern Europe, satellite imagery showing troop movements along contested borders, and encrypted communication channels connecting me to strategic command centers across the globe. Colonel Martinez appeared on the primary video screen, calling from his own location at Fort Belvoir. Behind him, I could see other officers working through Christmas morning, their dedication to mission over holiday traditions, a stark reminder of the military family I'd chosen. "General, we've received updated intelligence overnight. The situation has escalated beyond initial assessments. For the next 3 hours, I immersed myself in strategic analysis that would inform decisions at the highest levels of government. Troop positioning recommendations, resource allocation strategies, diplomatic coordination protocols with NATO allies. Each decision carried weight that my civilian family could never comprehend. At 0930 hours, my secure phone rang with a call that would change everything. "General Anderson, this is Colonel Hayes from the White House Military Office. The President would like to speak with you directly." My breath caught. A direct call from the Commander-in-Chief was unprecedented for an officer of my rank and experience level. Whatever was happening in Eastern Europe had reached the highest levels of national security concern. "Transfer the call, Colonel." Moments later, President Catherine Martinez came on the line. her voice carrying the weight of ultimate responsibility that only one person in the nation bore. "General Anderson, I've been briefed on your strategic assessments. Your analysis of the Ukrainian situation is exactly the kind of forward-thinking leadership we need right now. Thank you, Mr. President. I'm honored to serve in whatever capacity you deem appropriate." That's exactly why I'm calling. I'm announcing the formation of a special joint task force this afternoon, and I want you as the lead strategic coordinator. This isn't just about military response. It's about shaping America's foreign policy for the next decade. The magnitude of what she was offering hit me like a physical force. Lead strategic coordinator for a presidential task force. The kind of appointment that typically went to 3-star generals with decades of experience. Not 32-year-old brigadiers with 8 years of service. I understand the weight of this responsibility, Mr. President. I know you do. That's why you're the right person for this assignment. Your background in international liaison work. Your understanding of both military strategy and diplomatic nuance. We need that perspective at the table when we're making decisions that will affect global stability. After the call ended, I sat in the secure briefing room, staring at classified documents that would shape America's response to the international crisis. While my family was probably opening Christmas presents and enjoying their traditional holiday breakfast, I was being entrusted with responsibilities that would be featured on the front pages of newspapers around the world. Agent Torres knocked on the briefing room door. "General, there's a media team here from CNN. They're requesting an interview about your appointment to the task force." How do they already know about the appointment? The White House press office issued a preliminary statement an hour ago. Your name is already trending on social media. Trending on social media. My family, who spent considerable time on their phones and tablets, would likely see my name associated with breaking news about international crisis management before I had any opportunity to explain the significance of what was happening. The CNN reporter, Jessica Chen, was a seasoned defense correspondent who'd covered military operations around the world. She set up her equipment in a conference room while I reviewed the approved talking points that had been transmitted from the Pentagon press office. "General Anderson, thank you for speaking with us on Christmas Day. Can you tell our viewers about your new role with the President's task force? I'm honored to serve in whatever capacity the President deems appropriate. The situation in Eastern Europe requires careful analysis and strategic coordination with our NATO allies. You're remarkably young for such a high-level appointment. What do you think qualified you for this responsibility?" The question struck at the heart of everything my family had failed to understand about my career trajectory. My youth wasn't a disadvantage. It was an asset that brought a fresh perspective to complex international challenges. Military service has taught me that effective leadership isn't about age or traditional career timelines. It's about understanding complex situations, making sound decisions under pressure, and bringing diverse perspectives to strategic planning. Your rapid advancement through military ranks has been unprecedented. Do you see yourself as a role model for young women considering military careers? I thought about Tyler and Lucas, probably playing with new Christmas toys, while their parents dismissed their aunt's achievements as incompatible with real success. I thought about young women across the country who might be watching this interview, wondering if military service could offer them the kind of meaningful career I'd discovered. I hope my service demonstrates that the military offers opportunities for anyone willing to work hard and commit to something larger than themselves. Gender, background, family expectations. None of that matters as much as dedication to mission and service to the country. After the interview, I returned to the briefing room where encrypted messages continued flooding in from defense departments around the world. British intelligence services requesting coordination protocols. German Strategic Command seeking my assessment of Russian military capabilities. French Defense Ministry asking for American positioning recommendations. At 32 years old on Christmas Day, I was coordinating with allies across the globe on matters that would influence international stability for years to come. My phone buzzed with a text message from Madison. "Saw your interview on CNN. The boys are excited to see Aunt Sarah on TV. Can we talk?" The irony was overwhelming. Last night, they'd treated my military service like an embarrassing phase one should outgrow. This morning, they were contacting me because my face was on national television, representing American interests in international crisis management. I typed back, "In strategic briefings all day. We'll call when the mission allows." Another message came through, this time from my father. Sarah, we had no idea about the significance of your position. We need to talk. They had no idea. 8 years of service, multiple deployments, steadily increasing responsibilities and recognition. And they'd paid so little attention that my appointment to a presidential task force came as a surprise. The secure phone rang again. General Hawkins, calling from the Pentagon. Sarah, I've been watching the news coverage. The president's announcement has generated significant media attention. Your name is being mentioned alongside some very senior officials. Yes, ma'am, it's quite an honor. It's also quite a responsibility. The decisions you help make over the next few weeks will be studied in military academies for decades. Are you ready for that level of scrutiny? I thought about my family's scrutiny, their questions about my life choices, their inability to understand why I'd chosen service over suburban comfort. If I could handle their disappointment and dismissal, I could certainly handle professional evaluation of my strategic recommendations. I'm ready, ma'am. Good. Because there's more coming. The president wants daily briefings, and she's specifically requested that you present the strategic assessments personally. You'll be briefing the President of the United States on matters of national security. After ending the call, I walked to the window of the briefing room and looked out at the Hartford skyline. Somewhere, 30 miles away, my family was spending Christmas Day processing the reality that their daughter and sister, the one they'd treated like an inconvenient reminder of poor life choices, was being featured on national news as a key figure in American defense policy. My phone rang with another call from Madison. Sarah, I've been watching the news all morning. They're calling you one of the youngest generals ever appointed to a presidential task force. That's correct. We didn't understand. We thought you were we didn't realize how important your work was. They thought I was just playing soldier, just avoiding real responsibility, just making choices that took me away from what they considered meaningful life pursuits. Military service has always been important, Madison. The rank and recognition don't change the value of what I've been doing for 8 years. But this is different. This is the president personally choosing you for something that affects national security. It wasn't different, not really. Every deployment, every mission, every decision I'd made in uniform had been about national security. The only difference was that now the media was paying attention, making my service visible to people who'd previously chosen not to see it. I need to return to my briefings, I said. We can discuss this later. Sarah, wait. We want to make this right. We want to understand. They wanted to understand now, when my achievements were being broadcast on national television. When my name was trending on social media, when their friends and neighbors could see that their daughter and sister had accomplished something significant. Where had that desire to understand been for the past 8 years? I appreciate that, Madison, but right now I have responsibilities that require my immediate attention. After ending the call, I returned to the classified documents that would inform my recommendations to the president. Strategic assessments that could influence whether America deployed additional resources to Eastern Europe, diplomatic protocols that might prevent broader conflict, intelligence analysis that could save thousands of lives. This was why I'd chosen military service, not for recognition or media attention, but for the opportunity to serve something larger than myself, to contribute to decisions that mattered on a global scale. My family was finally paying attention, but only because the rest of the world was watching. Their interest in my achievements was reactive, not proactive. They cared about my success now because it reflected well on them, not because they understood or valued the service itself. The secure communication system chimed with an incoming message from the White House. General Anderson, please prepare for the presidential briefing at 1400 hours. National Security Council will be in attendance. Your strategic assessment will inform immediate policy decisions. As I prepared my briefing materials for the President of the United States, I realized that my family's newfound interest in my career came too late. They'd missed 8 years of opportunities to understand, support, and celebrate my service. Now they wanted to be part of a success story they'd had no role in creating. The woman who had briefed the president this afternoon had been forged by years of dedication, sacrifice, and commitment to mission over personal comfort. She'd been shaped by the loyalty of fellow soldiers, the mentorship of senior officers, and the satisfaction of serving something greater than individual ambition. My family could claim biological connection, but they couldn't claim credit for the leader I'd become. That honor belonged to the military family who'd seen my potential when my blood relatives saw only disappointment. 3 months later, I stood in the Rose Garden as President Martinez announced the successful resolution of the Eastern Europe crisis. Diplomatic channels I'd helped establish had prevented military escalation. Strategic positioning recommendations I'd developed had strengthened NATO alliances without provoking broader conflict. The work of our Joint Task Force, led by the brilliant strategic mind of Brigadier General Sarah Anderson, has demonstrated America's commitment to peace through strength, the president said to gathered world media. My parents watched from the VIP section, their faces radiant with pride they'd never shown when it was just their daughter serving her country in anonymity. Madison held up her phone, recording everything for Tyler and Lucas, who were back home following the live stream from their school's computer lab. The irony wasn't lost on me. They'd traveled to Washington to witness my public recognition, but they'd never visited me during 8 years of military service. After the ceremony, Robert approached with tears in his eyes. "Sarah, I owe you an apology that's 8 years overdue." "You don't owe me anything, Dad." "I do. We all do." He gestured toward Patricia and Madison, who stood nearby looking uncomfortable but determined. "We measured your success by our standards, instead of understanding that you were building something far more significant than we could comprehend." Patricia stepped forward, her voice steady despite obvious emotion. "I kept telling people my daughter was in the Army, like it was a temporary detour. I should have been saying my daughter serves her country with distinction." Their words were sincere, but they came 3 months after CNN made my achievements impossible to ignore. 3 months after my face appeared on magazine covers with headlines like, "The General Who Prevented a War." 3 months after their friends and neighbors began asking about their daughter, who'd briefed the president. "I forgive you," I said, because forgiveness was the right thing to do. "But I also want you to understand something important." I looked at each of them, the people who'd shared my childhood but missed my transformation into the leader I'd become. For 8 years, I built a life based on service, sacrifice, and commitment to something larger than myself. That life had value and meaning, regardless of whether it made headline news. The woman who prevented international conflict last month is the same woman who spent Christmas Eve alone in a hotel room because her family couldn't see past their own expectations. Madison wiped away tears. "We see you now, Sarah. We finally see you." "I know you do, but I learned something important during those months when you didn't." I straightened my shoulders, feeling the weight of my stars and the strength that came from years of proving myself in environments far more challenging than family dinners. "I don't need your approval to know my worth. The soldiers I've led, the allies I've worked with, the missions I've accomplished, they gave me something more valuable than family acceptance. They gave me purpose." Tyler came running across the Rose Garden lawn, having spotted me from the crowd. "Aunt Sarah, I saw you on TV again. Mom says you helped stop a war." I knelt down to his level, this nephew, who'd become my biggest fan despite barely knowing me 6 months ago. "I helped, Tyler. But the most important thing is that we all work together. Lots of people from different countries, all trying to keep everyone safe." "That's so cool," he said with 8-year-old enthusiasm. "When I grow up, I want to help keep people safe too." Lucas joined us, more serious but equally admiring. "Aunt Sarah, at school they call you a hero. Are you really a hero?" I looked past the boys to my family, who were listening intently to this conversation. "Heroes aren't people who get recognition, Lucas. Heroes are people who do the right thing, even when no one is watching, even when it's difficult, even when other people don't understand." Standing in the Rose Garden, surrounded by world leaders and international media, I realized I'd finally found the peace that had eluded me for years. Not because my family had finally accepted my choices, but because I'd learned to value myself based on the contribution I made rather than the approval I received. They used to erase me from Christmas. Now my name is engraved on plaques in the Pentagon, recognizing service that helped preserve international peace. But the most important victory wasn't external recognition. It was the internal knowledge that I'd chosen correctly, served honorably, and built a life of meaning that no one could diminish or take away. My phone buzzed with a message from General Hawkins. Sarah, the Joint Chiefs want to discuss your next assignment. We're looking at the potential for your second star. Interested? I smiled as I typed back, always ready to serve, ma'am. Because that's who I was. Not the daughter who disappointed her family's expectations, but the general who'd found her true family, among those who understood that service to country was the highest calling of all. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.